The abandoned Kenworth sat at mile marker 214 on Interstate 40, engine still ticking as it cooled in the desert morning. February 17, 1992, 5:47 a.m. The driver's door hung open. CB microphone swinging from its coiled cord. A family photo, father, son, 2 grandkids, still taped to the sun visor, edges curling in the heat. Where were they? Why stop here? Who saw them last? The electronic logbook's last entry glowed green. 2:31 a.m. Mention. Idle location. I-40 westbound. Min 214. But the GPS showed something else. The truck had been moving after that entry, moving without logging miles. State Trooper Williams touched the driver's seat. Still warm. Coffee in the Stanley thermos on the dash. Fresh enough that steam rose when he opened it. The manifest said Riverside to Oklahoma City, frozen goods. Time sensitive. Due at 0800. But Frank and Tommy Castellano were gone. Williams had worked this stretch of Interstate 40 for 15 years. He knew every mile marker, every exit, every place a trucker might stop. The Castellanos weren't the type to abandon a load. Frank had been driving for Transwest Logistics since 1971, 21 years without a single violation. His son Tommy joined him 3 years ago when he turned 21. They were a team, father teaching son the old ways, paper maps, proper CB etiquette, how to read the weather by the feel of the wheel. The reefer unit hummed steadily, temperature holding at -10. Whatever was in that trailer, it was still frozen, still valuable. The seal remained intact. Number RX4, 47289, logged at the Riverside Distribution Center 16 hours earlier. Williams walked around the truck. No skid marks, no signs of struggle. The passenger door was locked from inside. Both sleeping bags in the berth were unrolled but cold. A cassette tape, Willie Nelson's On the Road Again, paused mid-song in the deck. The CB crackled. Channel 19 was quiet, except for the occasional eastbound driver calling out mile markers. Williams picked up the mic, noticed something brown under his thumb. Dried coffee, or maybe blood. Hard to tell in the morning light. Breaker 19. This is Unit 7, at westbound 214. Anyone pass a blue Kenworth here last few hours? Static. Then a voice, gravelly from cigarettes and midnight coffee. That you, Smokey? Yeah. I passed that rig 'bout 3:30. Lights on but nobody moving. Figured they were catching some shut-eye. You see anyone around it? Negative. But there was another truck pulled over maybe quarter mile ahead. White Freightliner. Gone when I came back through at 5. Williams made a note. White Freightliner. He'd run that through dispatch. But something felt wrong about this scene. The way the coffee was still hot. The way both beds were used but cold. The way that family photos seemed to watch him from the visor. He called it in. Dispatch, Unit 7. I need a full response at westbound 214, possible 207. Kidnapping. The word felt heavy on his tongue. While waiting for backup, Williams searched the cab more thoroughly. Under the driver's seat, a leather wallet, $60 cash, credit cards, Arizona CDL, in Frank Castellano's name, born 1943, organ donor. The photo showed a man with thick gray hair and laugh lines, the kind of face that had seen a million miles and still found reasons to smile. Tommy's wallet lay on the dash, 24 years old, fresh-faced in his CDL photo, same brown eyes as his father, behind his license. A smaller photo, a young woman holding a baby, Maria and Tommy Jr. Love you, Daddy, written on the back. The glove box held the usual registration, insurance, 3 log books, 1 current, 2 full, a .38, special with 5 bullets, 1 chamber empty for safety, and something unexpected. A handwritten note on Transwest letterhead. Frank, this is your last run. Make it count. M. Williams knew that handwriting. Mike Donovan, dispatch manager at Transwest. But why would this be Frank's last run? The man was only 49. Too young to retire, too healthy to quit. The DOT inspector arrived at 6:23 a.m. Jennifer Chen had been doing inspections for 12 years. She'd seen everything: drivers high on bennies, ghost logs, double books, you name it, but she'd never seen anything like this. "Eld shows something interesting," she told Williams. Laptop balanced on the hood. "Look at this. They stopped 6 times between Riverside and here, but only logged 3. Avoiding scales? No, that's what's weird. They hit every way station. Full compliance. It's the other stops that weren't logged." She pulled up the data. First unlogged stop. A truck stop at exit 76. 11 minutes. Second, rest area at mile marker. 143. 7 minutes. Third side of the road. At mile marker. 189. 4 minutes. Getting shorter, Williams observed. Like they were looking for something. Or someone. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the highway. Eastbound traffic picked up. Mostly four-wheelers heading to work in Flagstaff or Albuquerque. A few trucks honked as they passed. The universal greeting between drivers, but Frank and Tommy weren't there to honk back. The reefer unit coughed, then resumed its steady hum. Chen climbed up to check the trailer seal. Still intact. She photographed it from 3 angles, then noticed something else. Fresh scratches on the lock mechanism. Someone had been trying to get in. Or maybe trying to make it look like someone had tried. "Williams, come look at this." He joined her at the trailer doors. The scratches were deliberate. Too uniform to be random damage. They formed a pattern. 3 horizontal lines crossed by 2 vertical ones. "Mean anything to you?" Williams shook his head. But he photographed it anyway. Everything mattered in the first 48 hours. After that, statistics said, the Castellanos would become just another cold case. Another mystery on the interstate. The CB in the truck squawked to life. "Breaker, breaker. Anyone got their ears on? This is Big Dog, looking for heavy metal and Junior. Y'all copy?" Williams grabbed the mic. "Big Dog, this is State Patrol. You know the drivers of this rig?" Silence. "Then who's asking?" "Trooper Williams, Arizona Highway Patrol." "The truck's here, but the drivers aren't." Jesus Christ. "I just talked to Frank 4 hours ago. Said they were running behind but would make delivery." "What time exactly?" "Had to be around 1:30, maybe 2. They were passing Holbrook. Said something about needing to make a quick stop." "They say where?" "Negative. Frank just said they'd found it. Whatever it was." Then Junior got on, all excited, saying something about the manifest being wrong. Chen looked up from her laptop. The manifest showed 42,000 pounds of frozen seafood, Seattle to Oklahoma City, with a distribution stop in Amarillo. Standard run. Nothing unusual about the cargo or the route. "Big Dog, this is Trooper Williams. What's your 20? Eastbound, at the 312. But listen, I'm turning around. Frank's good people. I'll be there in 90 minutes. "That's not necessary." "The hell it ain't. We look after our own out here." The connection died. Williams understood. The brotherhood of the road was stronger than blood. Sometimes, when you spent weeks away from home, other drivers became your family, your lifeline, your witnesses. Chen's laptop beeped. "Got something. 3 hours ago. Someone used Frank's fuel card at exit 198. 42 gallons of diesel. That's after the last log entry." "Right. And here's the interesting part. The transaction was declined at first. Wrong PIN. Then approved with the correct one. Someone else trying to use it? Or Frank under duress? entering the wrong code as a signal. Williams felt the desert heat climbing. Despite the early hour, sweat trickled down his back, under the vest. He walked to his cruiser to call in the fuel stop, noticed a buzzard circling about a quarter-mile west, then another, and another. His stomach dropped. "Chen, I'm going to check something. Keep working the scene." He drove slowly along the shoulder, watching the birds. They led him to a ravine, just past mile marker 215, invisible from the road, unless you knew where to look. He parked and descended carefully, boots sliding on loose shale. No bodies, but fresh tire tracks led into the desert, deep grooves from a heavy vehicle, dual rear wheels, like a freightliner. The tracks went about 50 yards, then stopped, turnaround marks in the sand. Whatever happened here, someone had driven off-road, deliberately. Williams followed the tracks back to where they'd stopped. Cigarette butts, Marlboro Reds, 3 of them, ground into the sand. Boot prints, 2 sets, one significantly larger than the other, and something else. A small gold medallion on a broken chain. St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers. He bagged everything and climbed back to the road. Chen was on her phone, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. She switched to English when she saw him. "Phoenix wants us to open the trailer." "Can't. Not without breaking the seal. They're sending someone from Trans-West with the manifest key. Should be here within the hour." Williams checked his watch. 7:15 a.m. The Castellanos had been missing for at least 5 hours. Every minute mattered, but they had to follow procedure. Chain of custody, evidence integrity. The difference between conviction and acquittal, if this went to trial. "Find anything down there?" Chen asked. He showed her the evidence bags. She studied the medallion through the plastic. "Frank wore one of these. Saw it in his previous inspection photos. Never took it off, according to the notes. So either he lost it in a struggle, or he left it as a breadcrumb." The morning grew hotter. More patrol units arrived, creating a barrier of flashing lights that slowed westbound traffic to a crawl. Drivers rubbernecked as they passed, some taking photos, others saying prayers for fellow travelers who'd met unknown fates. At 7:47, a Trans-West Company pickup arrived. Mike Donovan himself, looking like he'd dressed in yesterday's clothes. His hands shook as he handed over the manifest keys. "This can't be happening. Frank's my best driver. Never missed a delivery in 21 years. Mr. Donovan, what did you mean by last run?" Williams showed him the note. Donovan's face crumpled. Frank was retiring next month, moving to Tennessee to be near Tommy's kid. This was literally his last long haul before switching to local runs his final 2 weeks. Chen cut the seal carefully, preserving it for evidence. The lock clicked open. The trailer doors swung wide, revealing pallets of boxes, floor to ceiling. The cold hit them like a physical force. But something was wrong. The load was supposed to be 42,000 pounds. The weigh ticket from Riverside confirmed it. But looking at the pallets now, there was no way this was 42,000 pounds. Maybe 30,000 at most. "We need to unload it," Chen said. "That'll take hours. Then we better get started." They began pulling boxes, checking them against the manifest. Frozen shrimp from Seattle, salmon from Alaska, lobster from Maine, all legitimate, all properly labeled. But at the back of the trailer, behind what should have been the last row, was another wall of boxes. Older boxes, no labels, no shipping marks. Williams cut one open. Inside, wrapped in heavy plastic and frozen solid, were packages of something that definitely wasn't seafood. White powder in heat-sealed bags, each about 1 kilogram. "Jesus," Donovan whispered. "That's not." Frank wouldn't. "Call DEA," Williams told Chen. "We've got a different kind of problem." But even as the scene transformed into a federal investigation, Williams couldn't shake the feeling that the drugs were just part of the story. The Castellanos had discovered something that made them stop, something that made them disappear. The CB in Frank's truck crackled again. This time, no voice, just breathing, heavy, deliberate. Then 4 words that made Williams's blood run cold. They knew too much. The transmission ended. Williams ran to the truck, but the radio was dead. Chen tried to trace the signal. Nothing. Whoever had broadcast those words was already gone. By noon, the scene had tripled in size. DEA, FBI, state police, local sheriffs, everyone wanted jurisdiction. Everyone had theories. The drugs were worth approximately $12 million, assuming high-grade cocaine, but the packaging was wrong. Too old, like it had been frozen for years, not days. Special Agent Rivera, from DEA Phoenix, took over. She was all business, had seen too many drug runs gone bad to be shocked by anything. But even she paused when they found the second hidden compartment. This one was in the truck itself, behind the sleeper berth, a false wall that Chen's initial inspection had missed. Inside were documents, shipping manifests dating back 5 years, all for Transwest Logistics, all signed by Mike Donovan, all showing discrepancies between logged weight and actual weight. Mr. Donovan, Rivera said carefully, "I think you better call your lawyer. I don't understand. These aren't my signatures. Someone forged. This is impossible." Williams believed him. The man looked genuinely destroyed. But evidence was evidence, and right now, it pointed to a long-running smuggling operation using Transwest trucks. The Castellanos must have found out, Chen said quietly. Frank's last run. He was going to expose it all. But who took them? Williams asked. And where are they now? The answer came at 2:17 p.m. A motorist called 911 about a fire in the desert, 8 miles south of Interstate 40. By the time fire crews arrived, the white Freightliner was fully engulfed. No plates, vines scraped off, and thankfully, no bodies inside. But there was blood on the ground nearby. 2 distinct samples. DNA would later confirm. It belonged to Frank and Tommy Castellano. The trail went cold after that. Despite roadblocks, despite APBs, despite hundreds of man-hours, the Castellanos had vanished. The drugs were traced to a bust in Tijuana from 1987, evidence that had supposedly been destroyed. Someone inside law enforcement had been storing it, moving it, selling it, piece by piece. Mike Donovan was cleared after 2 weeks of investigation. The signatures were indeed forged. Security footage from Transwest showed someone else had been accessing the system using his credentials, someone who knew exactly when he'd be away from his desk. But knowing all this didn't bring Frank and Tommy back. 3 months passed. The case moved from active to pending. Rivera returned to Phoenix. Chen got promoted to regional supervisor. Williams kept driving past mile marker 214, always slowing down, always looking. Then on May 15, 1992, something strange happened. A postcard arrived at the Holbrook State Police Station, addressed to Trooper Williams. The picture showed the St. Louis Arch. On the back, in shaky handwriting, "We're okay, had to disappear. Trust no one in Phoenix. The real cargo wasn't drugs. Check the wall scratches again." Williams drove back to the impound lot, where the Kenworth was being held as evidence. The scratches on the trailer lock were still there. 3 horizontal lines, 2 vertical, but now he saw it differently. Not random marks, not a code, a word written in truckers' tally marks, MOTEL. He cross-referenced every motel along Interstate 40 between mile markers 190 and 214. Only one stood out: the Desert Moon Motel at exit 201, closed since 1989. but satellite photos from February showed fresh tire tracks in its parking lot. Williams went alone, off-duty, just a man looking for answers. The motel was a ruins of its former self, 12 rooms facing the highway, office collapsed, pool filled with tumbleweeds. But room 7's door was different, newer, recently reinforced. Inside he found what the Castellanos had found. Not drugs, not money, bodies, 3 of them, mummified by the desert air, each wearing a federal badge. DEA agents who'd gone missing in 1989 during a deep cover operation. Agents who were supposed to be in witness protection. Agents who'd been executed and hidden here while someone used their identities to move drugs for 3 years. The room also contained files, hundreds of them, documentation of every corrupt shipment, every payoff, every murder designed to look like an accident. The Castellanos had stumbled onto the motherlode of evidence against a network that reached from Mexico to Canada, with tentacles in every major law enforcement agency along the route. Frank had been smart. He'd photographed everything with a disposable camera, hidden the film in his truck, then made noise about finding something, drew them out, made himself and Tommy targets to protect the real evidence. Williams called it in from a payphone 50 miles away. Within 6 hours, the largest joint task force in interstate crime history had formed. 73 arrests over the next 2 months. Judges, cops, federal agents, trucking executives. The whole network collapsed like dominoes. But the Castellanos never surfaced. The postcard was the last anyone heard. Some said they went into witness protection so deep, even the marshals didn't know where they were. Others believed they were killed that night, and the postcard was sent by someone else to throw off the investigation. Williams kept looking. Every truck stop, every way station, every rest area from California to Missouri. He'd show Frank and Tommy's photos, ask if anyone had seen them, usually got nothing. Sometimes got stories. Yeah, I saw someone looked like that. Driving team for a small outfit out of Kansas, or working security at a casino in Nevada, or running a fishing charter in Louisiana. Ghost stories, wishful thinking. 5 years passed. Williams made detective, got married, had a daughter, named her Frances after Frank, though his wife never knew why. The case file sat in his home office, growing thicker with false leads and dead ends. Then, October 1997, another postcard, this time from Seattle, same handwriting. Tommy's boy started kindergarten. Looks just like his grandpa. Thanks for never giving up. F. Williams ran the postmark through every database he could access. The zip code traced to a neighborhood called Ballard, working class, lots of commercial fishing, perfect place for 2 men to disappear if they knew how to work with their hands. He took vacation time, flew to Seattle on his own dime, spent a week walking the docks, visiting schools, showing photos that were now 5 years old. Nothing. On his last day, dejected and exhausted, he stopped at a small coffee shop near the water. The owner was a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, wearing a flannel shirt that had seen better days. Her name tag said, Fran. When she poured his coffee, he noticed her wedding ring. Unusual design. 3 horizontal lines crossed by 2 vertical ones. Their eyes met. She smiled sadly, shook her head almost imperceptibly, and walked away. On his receipt she'd written, "Some stories need to end. Some families need to heal. God bless." Williams understood. He flew home, filed a final report, stating the investigation had reached a dead end, and officially closed the case. The Castellanos were listed as presumed deceased, victims of a drug smuggling operation they'd accidentally uncovered. But every February 17th, Williams would drive to mile marker 214 on Interstate 40. He'd park on the shoulder, drink coffee from a Stanley thermos, and remember the morning he'd found an abandoned truck and uncovered a conspiracy that reached from the desert to the sea. Sometimes, Late at night when the CB channels were quiet, truckers would tell stories about the ghost rig of I-40, how on certain foggy mornings, you could see a blue Kenworth with its lights on, two figures in the cab, heading west toward a delivery that would never be completed. They'd say if you honked as you passed, you'd hear a response on Channel 19, not words, just static, that sounded almost like 10-4 good buddy. Williams heard these stories and said nothing, but he knew the truth was both simpler and more complex. Frank and Tommy Castellano had made a choice that night in February 1992, faced with exposing a truth that would destroy families, end careers, and possibly get them killed. They chose to vanish, to become ghosts, to let the evidence speak for itself while they disappeared into the vast network of roads and travelers that crisscross America. In 2005, 13 years after the disappearance, Chen called Williams. She was now running DOT investigations for the entire Southwest region. "You need to see something," she said. She showed him a photo from a way station camera in Montana. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough. A man in his 70s, gray beard, baseball cap, standing next to a late-model Freightliner. The company name on the door was obscured, but the face was unmistakable if you knew where to look. "That's from last week," Chen said. "He's running legal now. Different name, different CDL. But look at his co-driver. A younger man, early 40s, same brown eyes. Tommy would be 37 now. This could be him." "What do you want to do?" Chen asked. Williams studied the photo for a long time, thought about the postcard from Seattle, the coffee shop owner named Fran, the choice they'd made, the lives they'd built. "Delete it," he said finally. "Some ghosts deserve their peace." Chen nodded, understanding. The photo disappeared from her screen, but she'd printed one copy, which she handed to Williams. He kept it in his wallet, next to his daughter's school photo, a reminder that sometimes justice comes in forms the law doesn't recognize. Sometimes the best ending is the one that never gets written down. Years later, when Williams retired, he cleaned out his desk and found the original case file, 500 pages of reports, photos, evidence logs, the foundation of the biggest corruption case in interstate history. But the most important piece wasn't in the file. It was the absence, the empty space where Frank and Tommy Castellano should have been. He thought about driving to Seattle one more time, seeing if that coffee shop was still there, if Fran still poured coffee with hands that had once gripped a steering wheel for million-mile runs. But some questions didn't need answers. Some stories were better left unfinished. Instead, he did what Frank would have done. Got in his pickup, turned onto Interstate 40, and headed west. The road stretched endlessly ahead, full of possibilities and mysteries. Somewhere out there, he believed, two truckers were still driving, still delivering, still protecting each other, and the families they'd fought so hard to save. The CB radio crackled to life as he passed mile marker 214, just static. But if you listened closely, if you knew what to hear, it sounded like voices, two of them, father and son, talking about the weather, the road conditions, the best coffee at the next truck stop. Williams picked up the mic, held it for a moment, then set it down, without speaking. Some conversations didn't need words. Some connections transcended frequency and time. He drove on, watching the sun set over the desert, knowing that somewhere in the vast network of American highways, the Castellanos were watching it too. The investigation files were eventually sealed. The official story became the accepted truth. Two truckers killed by drug smugglers, bodies never recovered. But in truck stops from coast to coast, drivers still told different stories about two men who'd beaten the system by disappearing into it, about justice served not in courtrooms, but on dark highways, about the brotherhood of the road protecting its own. Every rookie driver heard the tale eventually, usually late at night, parked at some rest area, watching the lights of passing trucks. The old-timers would tell it different each time. Sometimes Frank and Tommy were in Alaska, running ice roads. Sometimes they were in Florida, hauling citrus. Sometimes they were dead, sometimes alive, sometimes something in between, guardian angels of the interstate, watching over drivers who found themselves in trouble. Williams knew the truth was probably simpler. Two men, faced with an impossible choice, had chosen family over justice, disappearance over death, silence over truth. They'd left behind just enough evidence to bring down the network that had tried to use them, then vanished into an America that's bigger than any conspiracy, older than any crime, more forgiving than any law. But late at night, when he couldn't sleep, Williams would wonder about the details. Where had they gone that first night? Who had helped them vanish so completely? How had they managed to create new identities in a world of increasing surveillance? And most importantly, were they happy? The answer came in 2010. Williams was battling cancer, given 6 months to live, when a package arrived at his home. No return address. Inside was a photo, recent, digital, high quality. Two men standing in front of a blue Peterbilt. Not the same truck from 1992, but similar enough to be its descendant. The older man was unmistakably Frank, now in his late 60s, worn by time but smiling. The younger was Tommy, middle-aged now, with a teenager beside him, who had those same brown eyes. On the back, someone had written, "Tommy Jr. just got his CDL. 3 generations on the road. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for the time. F.N.T." Williams died 4 months later. His wife found the photo in his jacket pocket. She didn't recognize the faces but kept it anyway. Something about the way her husband had held it, the way his fingers had worn the edges smooth, told her it mattered. At his funeral, dozens of truckers appeared, men and women who'd driven hundreds of miles to pay respects to a cop who'd understood the code of the road. As the casket was lowered, air horns sounded from the parking lot. 18-wheelers giving their salute to someone who'd protected their own. Chen spoke at the service, told carefully edited stories about Williams's dedication to justice, his integrity, his ability to see beyond the obvious. She never mentioned the Castellano case directly, but every trucker there knew what she meant. After the service, an elderly woman approached Chen, gray hair, weathered face, flannel shirt, said she'd driven down from Seattle when she heard, wanted to pay her respects to a good man. "Did you know him well?" Chen asked. The woman smiled. "Never met him, but sometimes you don't need to meet someone to know them. Sometimes the choices they make tell you everything." She left before Chen could ask more questions. But there was something familiar about her walk, the way she moved through space like someone used to handling a big rig, the way her hands were rough from years of gripping a steering wheel. Chen watched her get into a rental car and drive away. Could have run the plates, could have pulled security footage, could have reopened everything. Instead, she did what Williams would have done. Let her go. Let the story end the way it was meant to. Not with answers, but with understanding. The official files remain sealed. The case is closed. Frank and Tommy Castellano are legally dead, have been for over 30 years now. But on quiet nights, when the moon is full and the desert stretches endless under the stars, truckers still report seeing that blue Kenworth, always heading west, always right on schedule, always one delivery away from home. Some say it's imagination. Some say it's exhaustion playing tricks. But the old-timers know better. They know that some drivers never really leave the road. They just shift into a different gear, find a new frequency, discover routes that don't appear on any map. And if you're ever driving Interstate 40 around mile marker 214, and you see lights in your mirror that shouldn't be there, and your CB crackles with voices that sound familiar but impossible, don't be afraid. Just click your mic twice in acknowledgement. You're in the presence of the road's own justice. the kind that doesn't need badges or courts, the kind that protects its own. The family photo is still out there somewhere, taped to a sun visor in a truck that's always moving, always delivering, always staying 1 mile ahead of the past. Frank and Tommy Castellano may have vanished that night in 1992, but they never really left. They just found a different way to drive, a different cargo to protect, a different definition of home. And somewhere, in a small apartment overlooking Seattle's harbor, an old woman makes coffee every morning and watches the sun rise over the water. She wears a wedding ring with an unusual design, 3 horizontal lines crossed by 2 vertical ones, the same pattern that appeared on a trailer lock one February morning when everything changed. She doesn't talk about the past, doesn't keep photos where anyone can see them. But sometimes when the fog rolls in and the fog horns sound their lonely calls, she picks up an old CB microphone she keeps in a drawer, doesn't connect it to anything, just holds it, remembers the weight of it, the 1,000 conversations it carried across millions of miles. Breaker 19, she whispers to no one. This is heavy metal's wife. Just wanted you to know, we made it home. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's full of all the words that don't need saying, all the miles that don't need driving, all the justice that doesn't need serving, because it's already been delivered. February 17, 2025, 33 years since that morning, at mile marker 214, the truck stop at exit 198 is a shopping center now. The Desert Moon Motel has been completely demolished. Even the stretch of Interstate has been widened, modernized, transformed. But the story remains, passed from driver to driver, in 10,000 different versions, each one true in its own way, each one carrying the essential message. Sometimes the road protects its own, sometimes disappearing is the only way to survive, sometimes the best delivery is the one that never gets signed for. And in the evidence locker in Phoenix, sealed and forgotten, sits a Stanley thermos, still has coffee residue in the bottom, still has Frank's fingerprints on the handle, still holds the heat of that last morning, when 2 men chose to become ghosts rather than victims. The coffee has long since dried to dust, but if you shake it, you can still hear something rattling inside, a small key, the kind that opens a post office box, Box 1492, in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood, rented in perpetuity by someone paying cash every year. Inside that box, if anyone ever looked, they'd find hundreds of letters, from truckers who'd been helped by strangers on dark roads, from families who'd received anonymous donations when times were hard, from witnesses who'd been protected without knowing how or why, all addressed the same way, to the ghost drivers of I-40, all saying essentially the same thing. Thank you. All understanding that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some disappearances are actually appearances in disguise. Some endings are really beginnings that just look different from the road. The interstate stretches on, 4 million miles of asphalt connecting every corner of America, and somewhere on those roads, Frank and Tommy Castellano are still driving, still together, still delivering something more precious than any cargo, the promise that sometimes, against all odds, the good guys find a way to win. Not in courtrooms, not in headlines, but in the quiet moments between midnight and dawn, when the road belongs to the truckers, and the truth belongs to whoever's brave enough to carry it. Mile marker 214 stands unchanged. Cars pass by at 75 miles per hour, never knowing what happened there. But truckers slow down. Some honk their horns, some click their mics twice, on channel 19. All of them remember. Because in the end, that's what the brotherhood of the road is about. Not the miles you drive or the loads you haul, but the promises you keep, the people you protect. The choice you make when the highway divides and you have to decide which route leads home. Frank and Tommy Castellano made their choice on February 17, 1992. They chose each other, chose family, chose to disappear rather than be disappeared. And in doing so, they became immortal, not as men, but as legend, not as drivers, but as the spirit of every trucker who's ever faced impossible odds and kept on rolling. The investigation is closed. The case is solved. But the story is still being written. Every time a trucker helps another driver on a dark road, every time someone chooses mercy over justice, every time a father teaches his son that some loads are too heavy to carry alone. That's the real legacy of the ghost rig of I-40. Not the mystery of what happened, but the certainty that somewhere, somehow, the Castellanos are still out there, still driving, still proving that sometimes the best way to fight the darkness is to become something it can never catch. A whisper on the CB, a light in the mirror, a story that refuses to end. 10-4. Good buddy. Keep the hammer down and the shiny side up. And if you ever see that blue Kenworth in your mirrors running westbound through the desert night, just remember, some